the meeting of the North Adams Finance Committee, budget meetings, and tonight we will be doing the North Adams Public Schools and the Northern Berkshire Vocational School, and this meeting is being recorded. So I am going to call attendance. Councilor Cohen? Here. Councilor Wilkinson?
Here.
And Councilor Harkin, I am here as well. So I think the first order of business is to approve our minutes from April 24th.
Move to approve?
Second? Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody, aye?
Aye.
In favor? Okay. Aye. All right, so approved. Okay, so.
They're very good minutes, too.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so we are going to move to the North Adams Public Schools. We're lucky enough to have Dr. Malkus with us. Thank you for joining us. Is there anything you want to just start with? Give us like a brief overview of the budget and what you're presenting tonight?
Sure.
Okay.
So, and everybody does have a copy of the budget.
Yes.
So, this budget represents a 2% increase over last year. This is a level service budget. There is some changes to the budget, but they have been absorbed through other line items, and I'll explain those as we go through. The budget represents a commitment from the city for $17,769,075. That it will be supplemented with a $250,000 transfer from the school choice revolving account. We've done that now for the last several years in order to complete, have a balanced budget. And in addition, we have requested a $15,000 transfer from the school choice revolving account for a total of $265,000, and that had to do with our reorganization of nurses' salaries, which happened mid-year. And instead of having a full-time health administrator, it is now a stipended position for a school nurse leader. So when you go through the budget, what you will see is that there are some line items that show a significant percent change. Almost all of those have to do with either salary adjustments in the case of the nurses, or in the case of finance and administrative services, that is because we are moving from a 0.5 school business administrator to a 1.0. We're adding grants management, since we've been very successful in obtaining several very large grants, which have a lot of requirements associated with them, so we wanted to increase that position. In addition, you'll note that under technology, building technology has a substantial increase, and that is because we have 4 technicians that work in the district. Their salaries were in Title I. Those needed to be reallocated to the local budget because Title I is intended for instructional purposes. And so you'll notice, for example, under our family services, which is on the next page, in district leadership and administration, that has a decrease. Family liaison and family services, that has a significant decrease in salary because a portion of that salary was allocated to Title I because family engagement is one of the criteria under Title I where we can do that. So there's where there's increases, there's offsets. And those offsets are usually attributed to the grants that we use to help fund some of the positions that we have in the district, whether it's Title I, IDEA, or some of the grant applications like the pre-K expansion grant that we were just awarded this past spring.
Okay. So altogether in the budget as a whole, you're adding that one position for the grant person, right?
That 0.5 is an increase.
Okay.
And then there is another position that is a new position, but it was due to a reallocation of resources, so the total FTEs at Drury High School has not changed. But we have, through right of reassignment, reassigned some staff members to pick up some coursework so that we were able to add a PE teacher because 7th and 8th grade classes are our largest classes at the high school. And we were putting one PE teacher in with about 40 or 50 7th and 8th graders. We decided that that was not in our students' best interests. And so through reassignment and reallocation, we've done that. But let me say, because this was a tremendous amount of work on the part of the school administration, no one will be getting a reduction in force or losing their job. Every reassignment was done where they were being based on performance qualities and were licensed in the area in which they're being placed in. So while there are some changes within the allocation of those resources, the people who are being placed in them already work for the district.
Okay, so are they instructional changes, so they're teacher changes, or are they being moved to administrative positions? How are we?
No, all teaching. All teaching. No new administrative positions other than the .5 school business administrator.
That's the grant?
And that's the grants management.
So that was a brand new position, or that also was somebody took on the .5 FTE? So
2 years ago, we had a full school business manager, full-time school business manager. We were in an attempt to kind of build some collaboration and shared services among the district. We entered into a shared services agreement with the North Berkshire School Union. They've gone through a feasibility study where it was recommended that they return to a full-time school business administrator. We recognized pretty early on in the year that with the work demands that we really needed a full-time position as well, mainly because we had these very large grants coming in that need a financial management piece as well as the actual implementation of the project. So we're really just returning to a full-time position that we had in FY17.
Right, I think I remember that. Councilor Forrest?
And I'm sorry, so for clarification, that's the business manager position?
That's the formerly school business manager position, where there's really no change in the requirements of the job other than there's this expectation of grants fiscal management, which is under the school business administrator licensure through the Department of Ed.
Okay, thank you.
So we're not going to have a school business manager and a school business administrator, just a school business administrator.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
It's the same person.
Same role.
Do you foresee being able to collaborate with other districts in other capacities? I know you attempted to try this with the business manager, it didn't seem to work out, but are there other areas you believe within the administration or, that I know there's regionalization that's trying to happen and I know it's going to take time. I'm just wondering, where we are as a district and where we could go with that.
North Adams Public Schools, certainly under the direction of the city through the mayor, is very willing to collaborate and partner with our neighbors. And so we do have a shared food services agreement with Savoy Elementary School District as well as with BART. We do have a shared services special education program that's housed at the Armory that North Adams will be picking up fiscal responsibility for. However, it's a shared program with its own budget, and it will actually save money for us in special education tuitions. And that has so far been a very successful collaboration and is now picking up another 2 districts. So where there are opportunities, we are more than willing to be a good neighbor and good partner and look for opportunities to collaborate so that there are economies of scale and efficiencies for us and our surrounding districts. All of those need to be approved by school committee. The school committee of North Adams is very willing to approve those types of agreements. That's not necessarily true for our partners.
Okay, right, yeah, because it's getting several districts to come together, yes, a lot of people involved in that.
Question.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councilor Bowles.
You said how that we share the food service. I'm just curious, like, what kind of savings do we see by doing that? Is it by purchasing more food? Is it,
Well, no, and that's a whole other budget,
Okay.
which I have notes on
Yeah.
to speak to. But with Savoy, because their numbers are such that they actually complement our community eligibility provision participation, they're actually considered a site for us. So in order to be eligible for that federal reimbursement, we need to hit a participation rate for economically disadvantaged students. That is determined not by free and reduced lunch forms like we used to in the past, it's determined by direct certification, meaning these are students who are enrolled in other programs as determined by the USDA. Since it would be beneficial to us to add Savoy as a site, they just become another site within our food services program, and that's how we report it to the state. For BART, their numbers are not complementary to our community eligibility provision, and so we're a vendor for them. And so the goal is that it is a self-sustaining program and, you know, a nonprofit. So we're not looking to make money off of it, but to have a sustaining income of revenues to afford the food service program that's being provided.
thank you.
So I guess in the collaboration, the biggest part of our budget, of course, is the school department and also insurance, health insurance. So because we have these programs and we're providing services for other districts, I mean, I would imagine we're taking that health insurance that we're providing for the people that work for us, and we're allocating that on to the other districts as well. I mean, we're not taking that full blow of the
Cafeteria workers do not, they don't work a number, only the managers work sufficient hours, and we're not actually adding any managers. We're only adding workers to sustain these programs. So there isn't a health insurance benefit. Now, with respect to the MBA Academy, that was considered as part of our setting of the tuition rate. So the tuition rate has to cover all costs associated with the education of that student. And so looking at the percentages of what funds are being expended, we use the percentage associated with our current per pupil expenditure rate, and then added on the special education services. So the tuition rate was actually calculated to incorporate all expenses associated with educating that particular student. Those funds will come in through the tuition rate in a separate budget.
Yeah, get back to the food for just a minute.
Sure.
Right now, the school system supplies free lunches, correct?
Correct.
And is there
Through a
enough funds?
federal reimbursement
Is there
program.
enough funds, or is that program going to continue for the coming year?
Well, it is subject to appropriation at the federal level.
Yep.
So we do have funds through FY19 and FY20. When there was the government shutdown, that would have delayed reimbursement. It's a month-to-month reimbursement because your reimbursement is actually based on the number of meals you served in the previous month. So in October, we have 22 school days. So there's 22 lunches and 22 breakfasts. So our participation rates are higher, whereas February, we have 15 school days. So our reimbursement is lower for the month of February simply because we served less meals. But we also didn't have to buy as much food. We didn't have as many work days. So that's how it's comparable over the course of the year. The food service budget is different than our budgets because we look at as we can project our budget for a full year of known costs, whereas food service, it's more like running a restaurant. It's a cash accounting system where it's like, this is how much I used in this month, and this is the pattern of meals that I see average in the month of April. We're just doing the month of April right now, data. So that's what I plan for and I purchase for, and then I get reimbursed for that outlay of funds the following month.
Okay. All I really wanted to know is whether the program was gonna go forward.
Yes.
The rest of the information is very interesting, but it's gonna go forward. Okay.
Yeah, as far as that goes, so we will have enough funds through fiscal year 20 as well. If something happens, say, the government shuts down again.
So we're in two different, so our fiscal year is right July 1st to June 30th, right? Federal government is January 1st to December 31st.
Okay.
So when the government shutdown occurred, that stopped our reimbursement at that point, right? The program is approved, but that stopped the reimbursement or potentially delayed the reimbursement, which is what it did.
Mhm.
Under the program, we're allowed to have as much as 3 months average monthly expenditures in reserve. So we try to get between 2 and 3 months. It's kind of hard, like I said, it's a month to month, so you never really know, am I hitting the 3 months? You can't have more than 3 months, but we try to target it between 2 and 3 months, and my food services director, Corey Nicholas, is really, really good at this. And so you're always spending for the month ahead, you're purchasing for the month ahead, so you can feed kids in the month ahead.
Mhm.
Then you can have as much as 2 to 3 months reserve. So if we had a government shutdown that went on for 4 months, and I'm hoping that, there'd be a lot more concerns nationally if that was the case, it would not just be affecting us and North Adams, it'd be affecting everybody in the nation.
Right.
So I would imagine that there'd be a major outcry to, do something or to alleviate that need for food, US food service programs through the USDA.
But for the most part, we will be set for 4 months, by the sounds of it.
3 to 4 months, definitely. Could be a little bit more than 4 months if we're really good with food purchasing.
Mhm.
And we're trying to do more with, farm to table, so that we're really trying to be very mindful and anticipating what our needs will be within the next month, the next quarter.
Okay. So you said that we can have up to 3 months in reserve. Is that for the food service or is that for the district as a whole?
That's for food service.
That's for food service.
That's
Okay.
only for food service,
Okay.
which is considered a separate budget from the school department budget because of that cash flow revenue-based
Okay.
accounting system. Because we don't get to close out the year until usually we're already into the next fiscal year. Because they don't get the month of June reimbursement until July, sometimes early August.
Okay. So if something happened, just say, for some unknown reason, the government is in disarray and, we're shut down for 6 months. And, are we able to take, if you had reserves within, the school district, would you be able to use those funds towards food service?
Normally, no. Under normal conditions, like school revolving monies need to be used for an educational purpose, not for operating costs. And food service would be considered under operating costs. However, in an extreme case like that, we'd be looking to our state to either provide relief or allow us some leniency to cover costs in the interim, knowing that eventually the reimbursements would come in and we'd be able to replenish those accounts.
I'm just going to ask Counselor LaForest, do you have any more questions regarding that? I know you brought the
Not about that
forward to the
specifically.
council, and I just want to make sure that all your questions are satisfied and we asked them all and you're good. Okay.
Yes.
All right, just wanted to-
I know that you have a busy evening, but I would love to tell you, we are serving well over 1,400 lunches every day. That's just lunch. And we have we participate in 6 food service programs. We have breakfast in the classroom, which both tomorrow morning in Boston, 2 of our schools will be receiving Gold School Awards for their level of participation. We have a grab-and-go breakfast pilot program up at Drury High School for grades 7 and 8. We have our full-service lunch program. We participate in the Fresh Fruit and Vegetables Grant Program. We provide after-school snack, which is another federal USDA program. We have our supper program, which services 80 to 120 participants a day. And then we do a summer food service program at anywhere from 4 to 6 sites. So the school department is taking advantage of the funding that we can receive through the federal government to provide a lot of opportunities for anyone under the age of 18, no matter what school they attend, in the city of North Adams to have access to healthy, fresh food.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Okay, do you want to go through the budget anymore? I see
Do you have any
Well,
questions?
I do
see
have a
one.
couple, and I don't know how
If
you
you
want
could
to
just
do it, Dr.
refer to
Malkus.
the line item and the page, then I can zip over there.
Not all of them have pages.
Oh, only the first 2 have pages.
So- If you don't mind if I jump right to Drury.
Sure.
Where are we here?
Budget.
Okay, Principal Colgrove, Principal Drury. I only bring this up because I know that Drury has undergone some significant changes in the last few years. And I'm sorry I wasn't on the finance committee last year to ask these questions specifically. But I see some decreases in salaries. And I know that you said you reallocated services and that there may be, take from here to give here. So if you look at 2,300 instruction teaching services, I think it's on the next page. I just have here noted, English had a decrease, and I know there's a bunch of different English line items. You had negative 26.21%, which was $20,000.
Something like that could occur when you have a veteran retire who's at the top of the teaching salary schedule, and you're now bringing on someone who's, at a substantial cost savings,
Okay.
has less experience.
So is that the case in English, math? And it looks like we've had 2 math decreases here that were pretty significant. So to your knowledge, do you know if we've had a veteran leave?
Well,
And what the impact
in
would be.
math, it was more that we had a highly qualified, experienced math teacher who took a job elsewhere, and we brought in a long-term sub to finish out the year, so that's why they're,
Okay,
and so what we're anticipating, as we post these as anticipated openings, is that we're going to find somebody who's not at the highest end of the salary schedule. We usually build it around a master's 6.
and so that long-term sub coming in could just be a bachelor's degree at that point?
Could be a bachelor's
Okay.
1, which is
Bachelor's 1.
what we pay for a long-term sub.
Mr. Gilman?
Is that a currently posted position?
It's posted as an anticipated opening. We've recently filled it.
Very nice. So that was your math 8th grade, it looks like you have a dual role for 7th and 8th grade as well there. So to your knowledge, is it the 8th grade teacher that in mathematics that's the long-term sub? Or is it this other math line item down here?
There's
2.
So
Okay,
one
so
is,
2 openings.
so one is in the mathematics department, that's the negative 17.54. And then if you go up to the mathematics 8th grade, that's the long-term sub.
Okay, okay, so for the principal at Drury, I see it's not one consistent increase or decrease. Is that a merit increase for principals, or how are the principals compensated with their rate?
1.5% is the same increase as the North Adams Teachers Association negotiated percent increase. So the non-bargaining administrator contract, we have language that indicates they will get the same increase as the native contract,
Okay.
but it does allow for some administrators to receive a little bit higher percentage
Okay.
based on their performance outcomes.
Okay, so it is,
So you won't see that it's consistent across all of the principals, but that is what was negotiated with the teachers bargaining unit.
because I think it was Holbrook had double increase for the, sorry,
I believe she was 2%, but
two
also
point seven
remember,
four percent.
remember, it also includes longevity,
Okay.
and so there's a longevity component of their contract.
So
that-
longevity with their position as principal or in the school district?
It's a position as principal, it's within the contract as principal.
Okay, thank you. At Drury there's one principal for the high school, and he also is the principal for 7th and 8th, or is that split?
One principal.
Okay, so,
One principal,
Um,
2 deans.
and can you just give me an overview of what the role is of a dean in high school versus the middle school? Is there a difference in the two roles?
They're
or-
they're not divided that way. So the 2 deans, the dean of students is what we would traditionally remember as the vice principal. They oversee student discipline and also usually health, wellness, safety. The second dean of students in the high school is the only school that has a second dean of students. That second dean of students is specifically around special education. And so they act as special education coordinator, in addition, oversee the disciplinary action associated with students who have an individual education plan.
Okay, so an IEP.
Mhm.
And do you still have 504s in the school district?
Mhm.
Okay, does
We
he also
have
look
to.
over that? Does he still look over the 504s as well?
Yes,
despite-
504s, well, actually, everybody takes responsibility for all of this, but 504s specifically fall under the auspices of the principal in each of the buildings.
Guidance services for Drury, I see that, did you add 2 adjustment counselors here?
Well, that was where we talked about the reallocation of resources.
Okay.
By not filling a couple pieces of other positions, based on declining enrollment,
Mhm.
we were able to put together an FTE. And so we added 1 school adjustment counselor for 7th and 8th grade. As I said, those are the 2 largest grades, and we found that they could benefit from having a dedicated school adjustment counselor.
Mhm.
And we were looking to add an additional guidance counselor, and so through looking at reducing some positions and reallocating our existing staff through the schedule, we were able to put together that FTE. So that is a cost-neutral addition of staff.
Great. Yeah, I'm sure that the extra help is needed. Appreciate it. Okay, I think that's it for my question.
Mr. Chairman? Is the reallocation of support in 7th and 8th grade, is that to assist in a changing curriculum at the 8th grade level where there will be different tiers of classes? Is that an intention in 8th grade next year to change how it's currently set up, where there'll be different levels of courses?
So when we first moved the 7th grade up to the high school, we looked at the 7th and 8th grade academy as one unit. And in looking at our data, and looking at the curriculum changes that are needed specifically in mathematics and science, we have new standards to address. We've done some reallocation of resources based on teacher performance, teacher highly qualified status, and really wanted to develop opportunities for students who are looking to really have that higher, more rigorous college and career readiness pathway leading up into our advanced placement courses in the junior and senior year. So yes, is the long answer to your question.
Counselor Forrest?
I guess I have a series of questions, if I may, through the chair.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're taking approximately $250,000 out of the fund,
The school choice
the school
revolving
choice,
account.
okay, revolving account. And will we receive replacement funds this year equal to that, or?
Well, with our school choice numbers, meaning our incoming school
Mhm.
choice, once parents make that choice, they tend to continue through that education, through their K-12 educational career, unless
Okay.
they're choosing to go to my colleagues McCann or to Bard. But if the child's coming in for kindergarten, which is when school choice starts, they tend to stay right up through until they make another educational choice.
I don't know if I.
So we can predict, based on who we have currently
Mhm.
enrolled under school choice, and then we accept school choice applications through, ongoing. So we know what school choice applications have been accepted for next year, and we know who has already been accepted under school choice and in effect is our student. So they count as our count. We can predict that, and we can then, with those school choice funds that come into our school, know that we're gonna be able to replenish that account based on that amount. That's why we're not going higher than that, significantly higher than that. We know that we can replace that amount.
Okay, so that last bit answered my question. How much reserve is in that account?
It's approximately $1 million.
Okay, and we maintain that at $1 million?
That is the goal.
Okay. Okay. So then throughout the budget, excuse me, you've referred to resource neutral or finance neutral reallocation of positions. So has the actual number of FTEs changed from this current fiscal year to the proposed fiscal year?
By 0.5 FTE.
That's the total change. Okay. So throughout the budget, I'm seeing, and perhaps you've answered this and I haven't fully understood, but throughout the budget, I see where primarily special education positions and Title I positions seem to have been cut. Is that true, or?
They're not cut, they may be, there may have to be a funding reallocation. So the district in the past had been assigning our technicians, our school technicians, to the Title I, to be paid for our Title I.
Okay.
We had a Title I audit. Guess what they told us? You can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we want to keep those positions, so those positions need to be funded through the local budget, but that means now I can identify teachers and aides and the community outreach coordinator who does family liaison work, and say their salaries can be offset using Title I. So that's why you see that percentage up and down.
Okay, so I guess my concern is, are students losing direct intervention or direct resources as a result of this reallocation of funds?
No, actually, we've added.
Okay.
We've actually added. So with special education, particularly right now, it is very hard for us to attract and retain new teachers with special education certification.
Okay.
I tell everybody who's pursuing a career in teaching, if you're coming into this profession, get certified in special ed. It is a route to employment.
Sure.
So I do not have enough teachers who are certified in special ed to fill the positions. So I hire people, I hire staff under a waiver. And then when something opens up in their field that they are certified for, they go for that, and that opens the position again. So
Okay.
now I have to try to, again, fill, so every year you will see multiple postings for special education.
Okay. And how is the transition for Northern Berkshire Academy to the public school system reflected in this budget?
It's not, because it's its own budget.
Okay.
So we're going to act as the fiscal agent, just like Collaborative for Education Services was the fiscal agent, but they were not We were not member districts of Collaborative for Education Services.
Okay, so they don't technically become part of the public school
Right.
system? And are their employees now employees of the city of North Adams or the public school system?
Yes, so they will be our employees, but their salaries are paid from the particular budget that is sustained by the tuitions coming in.
Okay, so do they then become part of the pension liability for the city, those employees?
Well, they're under MTRS.
Okay. All right, so they're not part of the
They're
city
not
retirement?
city retirement.
Okay. All right, and my final question is, so sort of back of the envelope computation, 2% is an increase but a cut against rising costs. Are you confident that this budget maintains the same level and quality of education that was afforded our students in FY19?
It's a level service budget. I would say that the work that we have done around the reallocation of resources at Drury High School particularly will give us an even better quality of education. And again, we made a lot of those decisions based on looking at our data and looking at where do we put our best performing teachers. You know, it's historically been done that you take your best performing teachers and you give them 11th and 12th grade, because that's when kids are getting ready for college, that's when kids are moving on in their academic career. There's a reality that we need to really look at how do we take our best performing teachers and help them in 7th grade, 8th grade, where our data shows that those students need the support of highly qualified teachers. So that was the lens we put to it, to say where do we put our highest performing teachers with our students of greatest level of need.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So with that being said, in shooting a question off from that, I always ask about professional development and what the plan is, and I think it's ultra important for us to support our teachers with professional development. I see that Drury is $16,500 that's been budgeted. The elementary schools are a little bit lower, so can you tell me a little bit about what's planned? I'm kind of excited to hear about that.
Well, we are, that is the local appropriation to support professional development, which also includes our course reimbursement, our contractual course reimbursement.
Okay.
We have almost every grant we write has a requirement that we allocate a certain percentage towards professional development. So we actually have a very hard time coordinating all of the professional development requirements that we have, particularly at like Drury, for example, because they have turnaround practices professional development and rethinking discipline professional development in the state. We have accountability professional development. We have the BrainWorks professional development from the Professional Development and Arts Integration Grant. We now have a significant amount of early childhood professional development for pre-K and K through our pre-K expansion grant. So those numbers don't represent the total depth and breadth of professional development within the district. For our local funds, we are going to be focusing our calendar professional development on mathematics instruction. Again, data-based decision. Our data shows that we need to really be thinking about how are we achieving the new mathematics framework standards, how are we better preparing students for the kinds of thinking skills and mathematical literacy they need to have to be successful on the assessments. And we're implementing a new curriculum as well as participating in a statewide program called ST Math, which is a brain-based math learning game, that online game system that students will be learning through and participating in and providing feedback to Harvard School of Education.
Oh, exciting. I just have one additional question. It's not something that, sometimes it's not always thought about in the educational format, but as far as like heating costs and utilities and that type of thing, you know, can add up really quickly. And I'm just wondering if there's something that you might be thinking about as a district, doing some kind of solar or something like that.
Well, we participate in the solar project through the city, so the school receives net metering credits. through the city.
Okay, you're part of that? Okay.
I will tell you that, when you have a newer building that's LEED Gold, like Colgrove Park, that they,
Easy to be efficient.
it's easier to be efficient, despite the fact that the boiler decided to give us a little bit of a gas hiccup a couple weeks ago. But the one we worry about during the winter, when we hit those cold snaps, that I'm on the phone very, very early in the morning with the facilities director and the custodians, is Greylock Elementary School. That boiler, we're worried about that one, because if it goes down, we're closed. I mean, there is no other alternative.
So do you put the maintenance of the equipment for Greylock? Well, it looks like you probably will be using it mostly for.
We wouldn't
heating,
be, we're looking at replacement, we can't look at repair. And so that's why we, requested a statement of interest, that's why we're looking at that process. Last night, school committee approved an allocation for update of the feasibility study so that we can really have an overall look at all of our facilities and there are, the economics associated with operating our schools.
Excuse me. Yep.
Okay.
So sort of off of that question, by moving students from the elementary schools to Drury, the 7th and 8th grade, which have happened, first was 8th and 7th, have the utilities and additional costs that come with that been sort of pretty much a lateral move? Or have there been
Because we're not
savings or?
operating Johnson School.
Okay,
We
so,
were operating Johnson School for the pre-K.
yes,
And so by pulling pre-K back into the existing 3 elementary schools, last year we realized that cost savings.
yeah.
Right? And now there'll be a cost savings around facilities with the move of the central offices to, municipal office space.
Yeah, I understand the office, but the schools itself, so we had the savings at Johnson, but by moving students up to Drury, anything that might have increased up there for electric use or anything like that would have just probably been savings at the other schools.
It really savings at the other end, because what happens is that if you've gone into any school, it looks like they don't have any space. Because it's urban sprawl, there's educational sprawl. And they use all the space that's available to them. So, that's why we do feasibility studies and have somebody with, really very objectively looking at square footage versus our number of students and our projected enrollment and putting that together for us in a report that allows us to kind of say, do we have space or issues, or do we have plenty of space?
Yeah.
I will say at Greylock, because of, the time that it represents, when it was built as a beautiful brand new school, there are space limitations there.
Thank you.
Go back to the open space at Drury. I'll open up the space.
Go ahead, sir.
I was just wondering, on the line item for textbooks and related material health at Drury,
At
that's
Drury.
0. And I was wondering if you could speak to why there's no money being allocated to that.
Well, for the last 2 years, we've did 2 years ago, we did the update on our English language arts curriculum. Last year, we made a major investment in mathematics. So it was a very large investment. The next should be science and/or history. The issue is that the science framework standards have just come out, and there is really no resources that are completely aligned to those standards. So we're exploring, excuse me, we're exploring which resources would be a best fit to those new science standards. And the history standards are very much in flux right now. There's been this push in on civic engagement, And you don't teach civic engagement through a book. Civic engagement you learn by doing. Thank you for being here, right? That's an example of civic engagement. So we're really looking at that being more of an experiential, project-based learning option. And we have teachers who are working on developing that curriculum, as well as there are teachers throughout the state working on different projects. There's some very nice projects coming through the Library of Congress. So we felt that that was one area that we didn't need to make an investment for this year, because we don't really have a good model to say that's what we should be investing in. So rather than rush to put something in place, we want to give teachers time to really look at the standards, to really look at the resources that are available, and move to a place where they're making a wise investment. Because when we make that investment, it's got to be able to work for at least 5 years.
So is there currently a health studies program at Drury, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Is there
those,
just no money for that, or?
well, actually, we've been very lucky these last couple of years through a collaboration of the Northern Berkshire County Superintendents through the District Attorney's Office. We had an investment in the Life Skills Program, which is a evidence-based substance use prevention program. The other is our Get Real program, which was invested in on our behalf by the Berkshire United Way.
I don't have any other questions. Does anybody?
Nope, I'm good.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
I have a question in reference to Drury on the non-clerical instructional. The very bottom line, SPED, is that special ed?
Is it the Drury Sped office staff? Is that the position you're referring to?
Yeah, at the very bottom of the page.
Yes, that is a clerical paraprofessional that services the dean of students for special education.
Okay, so that I had it correct. So my question is, on the percentage change, you showed 0, but yet the dollar value is a decrease of $64,000. Why is that?
I'm looking at a 1.51% increase.
Are you on the first page underneath school building leadership?
No, it's under 2330. At the very bottom of the page.
Clerical or substitute, it says. FED, SPED.
Yes, the very bottom.
The Student Support Center.
Oh, the very bottom, it does say 0% decrease, but there
It
was a
does.
decrease of negative 64,000.
So that's for special ed for the children that need it?
No, this is for non-clerical paraprofessional / instructional. So,
All right, so why the big decrease? And
yeah, I believe that the first number is incorrect. Because the last number makes much more sense to me in terms of those types of salaries, especially because it was for a substitute, I believe.
Yeah, it's under, no, non-clerical paraprofessional.
If you want to leave me some contact information, I can email that for you.
yes, I will do that.
So you're saying that the first number, 80,000, should be 15?
I think that that's all of the special education paraprofessionals.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a mistake in the way it traveled across the column.
For the 80s, so.
But I will make sure that I get that answer for you.
Thank you.
Could you just CC me on that as well?
Well,
Yeah.
and maybe it might be better
If you
to
just send it to me,
you.
and I will contact Mr. Smith.
So should we
Yes.
get her your contact information at the end of the meeting?
Right,
Thank you.
thank you.
I think the first column represents all of the paraprofessionals. And then the percent change is 0, but then it's showing a dollar amount decrease. And the dollar amount decrease doesn't make sense to me unless they've decided they don't need special education paraprofessionals, which now is not true.
Right.
Since they break them out, unless it's because she decided to break it out. on the next page. But either way, I'd rather have the school business administrator give you
Yeah.
the final answer on
Yeah,
that.
that'll be fine. Okay, well, thank you very much for
Anything
your
else?
time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I certainly learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Jim, your turn.
Yeah, we're a tough crowd here.
Everybody stretch and get up.
Yeah.
Do some lunges with those knees.
Oh, good, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Your habits.
Mr. Brosnan and Mr. Maloney, right?
Right.
Yes.
Human Rivers and Mrs. Branch are with us also. Who then is covering for us at our spring advisory committee meetings.
All right.
So you're the budgets I like to see.
Hey.
I'm not listening. You can talk as much as you want.
We go through those pieces, yes.
Yes.
Less than it was before.
Yes, absolutely.
So, can I just ask a general question?
Go
for him
ahead.
to start? Can you just start with explaining where you're seeing the biggest changes in your budget, whether it be up or down? And give us a little bit of a overview of why those
Sure,
numbers have changed?
sure. Opening piece is 3-year part. 2 years ago, we were 2.76% increase. Last year, we were 0.4% increase. This year, we're 2.36% overall increase. And I think going through, what best sets that up is the line item review, and I'll show you where those areas are. Most of those are just the general piece, and I'll let Dan, who's our budget chair, kind of give you a little preemptive increase talk about why 2.36%. So, if you want to.
Yeah, obviously, the budget itself is really just a maintenance budget. We've used the word, Jim has used the word vanilla budget in the past.
I'd like to get to talk a little
Just
louder.
talk a little louder.
Sure, yeah. We,
Although those are not.
Okay.
That's fine.
The budget itself is basically a maintenance budget. It doesn't
Okay.
do a whole lot to move us forward. We're fortunate, we've got some exceptional staff in administration at our school that continue to move forward with what we have to work with. As Jim said, the budget is a very, very lean budget. Last year's budget, we kind of looked at things, where we were tracking, we knew we kind of had to do a reset. So that's why we ended up with that 0.04% increase last year. I think it was less than $6,000 of actual increase in our budget. Typically, we open the door in the school on July 1st. We're always looking at about a 2.5% increase, utilities, contractual obligations, this is normal day-to-day stuff, drives the budget about 2.5%. So last year, we made a serious commitment to, as we've done for the last 20 years, to right-size our operation. And we made some changes that all worked. We were certainly concerned that pulling the budget back that far last year, we'd have to catch up to it this year. But Jim sat down and did a lot of work before the school committee really got to the budget and brought in a budget that was really under 2.5% to begin with. And, through just a lot of creative things, he continually has used grants as much as possible to fund equipment and purchases, funding some positions that can be funded through grants. So there's just a number of things that we work with every day through those things. The main problem, and Jim's going to go through the pages themselves, but if you just look at page 1 on the table 1 of our budget, it's this particular page here.
Okay.
If you look at the top line that says Chapter 70 on it, that's where our problem is, and there's been a lot of discussion about education reform, and some of the formulas are outdated, and it doesn't take into account lots of things. It doesn't take into account spiraling and health insurance costs that have happened. But if you look at 2016, the state provided us with $4.6 million basically for that. And you can look across, and it's minor increases, a couple $1,000s a year. So it's this year we're at $4.7 million. So we're operating with about $130,000 more of state aid. Our budget has gone up more than that. So every time we do that, this extra money that we need gets reallocated to the cities and towns. The state does give us a base funding line number that tells us how much each city and town has to pay, but we have gone beyond that over this last 5 years, and when you look at the municipal assessments, those are driven by the lack of Chapter 70 funding, is what they are. You know, like I said, those formulas are 20-plus years old. There's a lot of talk about re-looking at those formulas, but whenever you change something, there are unintended consequences. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know if we're going to end up on the better side or if something may get nicked. So we're hopeful that whatever they do, they take a broad look at things and make sure that vocational education, which is expensive, but if you've seen some of the stories that have been in the press and the governor's focus on vocational education, it gives our graduates skills they need to compete in the 21st century. It's the only way you can do it these days. There's children coming out of colleges now that can't find jobs that match up to what they've gone to college for with huge debts. And you need a skill, whether you go to college after McCann. Many of our students do go to college, and they're and they're going on beyond what they've learned at McCann. Other students take different paths, but if those skills, those working skills, learning how to work, they're just so valuable that we try to provide. This year, one of the saving parts of our budget is the health insurance through Berkshire Health Group we belong to had an actual 0% increase. And that in itself, combined with some changes we made in our health insurance offerings last year, we changed some of the percentages through contract negotiations. Some of our staff that were on different plans looked at the big picture of things. They were able to save themselves some money and along at the same time save the school district some money as well. But there's just things like that you can't keep doing what you're doing every single year and expect different results. You've got to look at things, and we really did over the last year or two have looked at a lot of things along those lines to build the budget that our communities can support and can afford. Jim will also show you our enrollment is fairly stable. Vocational education, there's great value to it, and it is popular throughout the state and the country. But our enrollment is fairly stable in a county that the population is changing. I'm sure as time goes on, if you've seen the data, where you're looking at kindergarten, 4th grade, 8th grade student populations, the trend is that's going to continue. The population is diminishing, and some of our enrollment will change. The state does in their formula fundings, they do kind of have like a hold harmless where they don't fund us less than they did last year because even as you were talking with North Adams, it costs us the same amount of money to operate the school, whether we've got 400 students or 500 students. It's the facility itself, the electricity, the heat, all those things are fixed. So it's our best interest and everybody's to use this building as most efficiently as possible. We've done a lot of other things, and we've just, next year we're going to have what we call it, an employment and co-op coordinator for our students. We've had a retiree that's been doing this for a number of years. Recently passed away, and he's probably been doing it for well over 20 years. But we've needed to expand the role a little bit beyond that. There are some licensure requirements. We're going to have to take some money from other accounts to fit this in for next year. But we have a lot of activity building after hours as well. We've done, I think it was probably like 76 electricians, somewhere in that range. Last year that were, they have to keep up training to maintain their licenses. We've done some things with plumbers. All these things are funded outside of our budget, and they're all self-sufficient, but it makes better use of the facility for everybody in the community and to everybody's benefits. These folks don't have to travel to Springfield or Westfield for this training. They can stay in North Adams or Northern Berkshire.
So your post-secondary education is funded separately?
This is separate from that. This is just like an after
Okay.
hours that we're talking about.
Oh, the after hours,
Yeah.
okay.
And so there's a lot of use of the building. If you drive by there just about any night, the parking lot is sometimes full. You can have trouble finding a parking space. But there's just a lot of good programs going on after hours down there. Again, Jim has been involved with the Regional Employment Board, which has a new name these days. Mass Hire. For years he's been involved with that, and a lot of these things are coordinated through them to some extent. But this new position that we're going to enhance is going to do more of that to try and see what the needs are in the community for training for machinists and other things. Because a machine shop may buy a a $300,000 piece of equipment, that they need some training and a place to go. We've already have this piece of equipment on our grounds that Jim has got through state grants. The towns and the cities didn't have to pay for it. But we have a lot of these things. The manufacturers come in and they are very willing to teach some of these things and show our instructors how to run them, as well as other people in the workforce. With a lot of retraining going on, you know, sometimes it's not quite so much hands-on as it was today with programming and a whole different skill set that's needed. These are the jobs that are the future, and you see folks like, you know, Todd Machine is expanding down there, and they need qualified people that know how to work and want to work. And that's what our goal is, to assist those folks along the lines. And hopefully this new fellow's going to be able to reach out a little bit more. We do well down in Pittsfield and South County, that a lot of these things do work there as well. But you know, overall, it's been an incredible place. I don't stop as often as I should down there these days, but you can walk in the building at any point in time during the day. People are on task. People are doing things. The news stories you pick up through Berkshire and the Berkshire Eagle that talk about some of the success stories are only a small part of the success that really is on down there. But it all takes a lot of effort, and it does take money. And hopefully we found the balance here with this budget that will keep us moving forward.
And that is the intro, but now I pick up and do the facts. Thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
Stole his limelight.
There it is, it's perfect. And those are all the good points that we're gonna see, and then after time we go through. If it is okay, stop me at any time if you have any questions. And as I go through, I'll do the table renewals, because there's not much here of the changes, because they're just historical. So if I'm doing table 1, it's just laying out a 5-year piece. I think if you go to the very bottom, that municipal assessment, that line item, that's the one Dan talked to, that's the over the minimum piece, because the top one is chapter 70. Fifth one down is municipal minimum assessment. Both of those come from the state formula. That's the ed reform formula. That's the guarantee. Table 2 will show you how it's split out. The bottom one is the amount of money over the net school spending. I don't know of a district that is operating on net school spending. I think it's really impossible to do that. But that was an ed reform 25 years ago. What the problem then was communities that were severely underfunded. So the purpose behind it was to put at least a baseline minimum so that communities were supporting the schools. To that point, looking at the educational part, we're $555,000 over that number, assessed out by formula tables to show you later how that's done. But this is, the table 1 is just a kind of a roadmap, and really to Dan's point, look at where we were in chapter 7. You know, in some years we had an $8,000 increase. State aid increased $8,000 from one year to the next. Table 2 is going to show you the allocations. The top line, if we go all the way down, you know, just close to the bottom, North Adams, you see your municipal minimum assessment. Guess what? Less than it was last year. So at that point, you can move approval and we'll all say goodnight, right? And then despite the fact that you have more students, that's another little question we'll come up with. And part of that is, in the transportation assessment, is driven by formula. So the top one is the ed reform formula. That's the minimum from North Adams, comes from DESI. The transportation is calculated by district agreement. That's how many feet. So it's the numbers of students you have, that the transportation piece. The assessment is the number I just talked about, that 555. And then the capital, that comes up at the end of the budget. That's some of our capital improvements. Now what happens with the transportation? Go back to the first page. It says chapter 71, it says 275,000. That's the transportation that we receive. The regional transportation pieces that the state comes. And that's been in excess of 50%. It's pretty strong in both the House, the Senate, that came out today, and the governor's budget. So a pretty good idea of what happens with that. So that's the number that's down here, that's up here, chapter 74, transportation. Then there's a number of 165 at the bottom. That's the missing link between cost of transportation that the state sends us. And every year, I never know what that number is till the end of the fiscal year. You get one payment in January, you get a final payment at the end of June, sometimes early July. And then once those are added together, it's usually a little bit less than what they predicted. So that 165. So this is how we do the formula piece to break out for every community, listing out the statutory costs and then the assessments and how they work out. So in the particular case, it just lists these, you can follow along. Municipal minimums going across, cost of, and then fold that into what was our transportation or other assessment, and go back to the numbers of students that we'll see on table 3 and 4 going forward. So if you go forward, this chart, it's got the enrollment. It's got the enrollment for about 7 years. So you can also see the enrollment of all of the communities, the up and down, the approximate cost calculation, that this student population assessment is how we determine transportation over the not received by state transportation assessment. And the other calculation is that more than the minimum assessment at $555,000. That's also done by that calculation. So the approximate cost is what percentage of the numbers of North Adams students, the 139 of them, of the total 449 in the district, and that's your percentage, and that's what's applied.
Superintendent.
Yes.
So, I don't have that sheet in front of me, but remember sitting at these in the past. Part of the reason, obviously, North Adams sees the savings is because our number of students of your percentage have dropped. Again, I don't have that sheet right in front of me, but I know at 1 year, at one point, I think, we were probably the majority. I don't know if it still is. Just got handed the sheet.
Yep.
Adams is now, is it still?
No, you are, not Adams.
Are we?
21% of the student population, Adams is 29.8.
Okay, so that must have shifted back at one point.
It does.
And if I remember correctly from past meetings, do you still pretty much accept about 100% of the applicants?
Just about, because there's a handful. We average from the high school, and we average about 150 applications every year over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
which is good, considering the declining
Right.
school-age population in Berkshire County. With that piece, there's just very few students who are not accepted at this piece. There's round 1 and round 2, and we sort that out. And a number of students from out of District 2 make up the total population to fit the school. It was still undersubscribed. We still could take more students if we had the applicants to go, meeting the standard. So it's pretty much a baseline. I think there were 2 or 3 students last year, to my memory.
And how are you foreseeing the future, 5-10 years down the road? I mean, obviously you can see student populations these days.
Well, I've seen it disappear, but I also know that task force has done a tremendous amount of research, and anytime they do the numbers, they'll put everybody's statistics together and they'll throw them all, and the only one that's going up is us. And I think we're going down less than other people are going down, so you're, by that virtue, going up. I think to what Dan talked about, it's a statewide phenomenon, the vocational technical schools. I have colleague schools that are 200 or 300 waiting list freshmen. I had one that probably has 12 or 1,300 applications for 400 spots. Good luck. Glad I don't have that issue. So I think that kind of popularity drives it. Here are the Berkshires, and we partner well with Taconic, and I think it's good with the new Taconic High School that's allowing that opportunity a little bit more towards South County and the city of Pittsfield. But right now, we're able to accommodate the numbers of students, and I think going over that, Counselor, if you want to go back 2013 and 2019, you see a little bit of a road, and I think the dips in the population really are attributable to, we're probably, if I was the statistician to say, we're getting the same percentage of the, if not more, a greater percentage of the 8th grader applying and coming into the can as a 9th grader than we might have 10 years ago. But it's just that there's less of them, so your real number kind of drops a little. So we're kind of, we're holding our own, and everybody else dropping a little bit faster than we are.
Thank you.
Okay. At the bottom, when I talk transportation, and we say, okay, I'm estimating the state's gonna give us 275, all our communities together 165. Guess what? Comes in, state gave me 280 or 290. We deduct that, and then here are the refunds. So if we go to last year, it was $882.48, and you can follow that tracking. Anything in transportation, we return to the community. So I will send the mayor a check sometime in August or September once the books are closed and everything's set. We only use that assessment for transportation.
I have a question on that.
Yep.
We just happened to be glancing through this, and the North Adams went from about 17,000 last year, being reversed about 8,000. And I know you just gave your little spiel there, but I didn't quite understand the whole thing, so could you just explain to me why there was a drop?
Yeah, I've upped my estimate of what the state's gonna give me, because I have a better consistent piece that they're up higher. So if I increase that by 10 or 12 or 15 or 20, because, 1,000, that means there's less than I'm assessing. So if we go back to 1 to that point, let's go back to table 1. Let's go back and follow this transportation assessment down here, based on state numbers. I'm going 65. I'm pretty close to where we were the last few years, much higher at the other end. The state had funded the regional transportation much higher in the final ends of budget, which we didn't get till July. So there was an even greater, 2 years ago, there was an even greater bump. So where I might have said then, my estimate would have been 255,000 or 265,000, and we might have gotten 280 or 90 or something. So the return was less because the charge was less. So that's why it's 88 was 16 before. Because consistently, if you look, it was 16, then 21, 25, 26, 16.
Well, it just says,
Yeah.
it's been kind of consistent more or less over the years, and all of a sudden this year it's gone.
They've
Took
given
a
us,
dive.
they've been giving us more, and I've been predicting that more, so I don't have to go up first up front and say, okay, I need 185,000. Let's whittle that down to 165 and take our gamble that they're going to be consistent.
So you have a better estimate.
Yes, I have a better estimate, and the state's been more consistent with mainline, increasing the dollar as well as the percentage. Remember, if it proliferates the numbers of school districts and their formula of transportation, add this or that or another school, but level funded the dollars, that means everybody gets less. What they have been doing is funding it and increasing the monies in the regional transportation to offset any more people take advantage of it. And because of that, the monies have actually been higher. So the percentage of our cost of transportation has been higher. So good news, it's a positive number for you and the other end of that. And then, of course, the calculation is on the last table 4 is how do we figure out the capital calculation? This is a huge issue when we're doing a school project or something. We've done a couple of those in the past. Not a huge issue if I'm looking for $40,000 to $50,000. But it's an EQB, and when the EQB comes in every 2 years from DOR and the population, we go right to the charts and we update it. So this won't probably change. This percentage won't change next year because the DOR won't update its EQB. As soon as it does, we go right back and always update this to be up to date. That's how we figure out what you should have. So that's the history, maybe 5 years running and that kind of thing, of we're tracking the basic fund sources. Now, the other is the line items, the pages of the budget that appear before you. There's going to be a couple things that are going to draw to your attention before we get started. And we're going to see it, not necessarily on page 1 am I going to see it, but you are going to see, materials and supplies, business and finance. No, you're not going to see it there. You're going to see it on the following pages. End of the year school report, end of the year fiscal report, the EOYD, that we have to do every year is the most sophisticated finance reporting required by anybody. Once that accounts, and that accounts for a lot of the numbers you see on the left, a lot of the numbers that all of us use because we build our budgets based on how we have to report them at the end of the year. DESI last year started a process, and every couple of years they'll do some changes to that, significant or otherwise. What they did a year or so ago, and that's why it's in this budget for the first time, we're going to see a number of line items, 7 or 8 of them, in technology fields, where we had educational technology, 1 line, 1 item, 1 reporting number of months. Now we have it broken down in 7 or 8 different categories. I will go through this. When you see columns that in the past, as we see the first 4 years, you'll see a whole bunch of zeros. That's when I'll stop and explain where that is. And that's how they're breaking out the reporting. As soon as we get to, I'll ask for any questions on page 1. When we get to page 2, I think is where I have my first technology changes.
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, and most of them are, and if I catch them, I'll draw it to your attention. If not, if you do, and please ask me and I'll go through because most of them are just about the same. The first one is district administrative technology. Just what I said, is a new technology. This is your Teach Point, Blackboard, the X2, the student services, The department wants to know how much the district's paying for and using, and what's the cost of this. Before it was lumped. So now they want to break out a lot of these costs, because as we've said to them in calculating the formula, you got to understand that even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 15 probably, we didn't have all of these expenses. We couldn't make, a Blackboard phone call, emergency phone nets. We couldn't do cell phones. We didn't have the student services software expenses and the pieces and that. You as a parent want to go on the website, you want to go to your portal, you want to see how the son and daughter are doing, and you want to see what the assignments are, and all of that sophistication comes along. It's fabulous, but it does have a dollar amount. So the department now wants to figure out what are schools expending in these categories across the state. So we do too. So it's good for us. We always broke it out in our own notes, and we had pages of notes to figure out what do these line items cost. This is much better for us going forward. Same thing with administrative technology, your copiers, your printers, all those kinds of things in the school system, and supplies to support those. Always lumped before in some other account, now broken out to say, what are you spending on these items? Printer cartridges and replacements and all of those things. That all goes into a different piece in the administrative. So you've got district administrative and administrative technology, all within the 2,000 accounts. Remember, those are educational services. Those are my use in my office. This is what's happening in the
Yeah,
school.
we're really breaking it down here.
Oh, they do.
Can I just bump up to principal and
Sure,
see
yeah.
there's a
Yep.
decrease there in contracted services?
Yeah, okay, and one of the good reasons that you're gonna see a huge decrease is when I said that technology pieces were tucked into other accounts, a lot of the
Were
contracted
there.
services
Were
are
here.
right here.
Okay.
For the X2, for the Teach Point, Blackboard, all those things, they're now slipping up a little bit to the top one. So if you did 18 and 14 would be pretty darn close, then there'll be some others. So that's where it was listed in these big accounts. Now it's much more, it's better to track for us, but it's much better for the state to know what are you spending in these particular categories.
I think I'm all set. Anybody have any questions?
I'm still seeing like 75,000
Right.
more from last year.
Which one?
For,
Professional
It's a
salary.
professional.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's,
have we gotten there yet? I'm sorry.
No, yeah, we
Am I
have this,
moving?
we're on, no, we're on the same.
So, could you just explain, is
Steph?
that just more,
column, movement, salary, that accounts for all of those.
so step up,
Oh, yeah.
movement of positions?
Every year, everybody's moving unless you're on max. Numbers of faculty members that are reaching and achieving professional status, got the master's degree, moving over columns. So columns to the right, steps up and down. So that accounts for those pieces of the faculty moving across into those areas. Because as Dan talked before, we had a decrease in the previous one, so we had one less position, so to go through that piece. So this is just that kind of
Do you
salary
foresee,
percent increases. And then
I'm sorry. Do you foresee your staff retiring? Do you see, so you have a fairly young, still working?
Right, or
kind of-
I told them they can't retire if they were good. So.
Till you retire,
So,
right,
That's right, that's right. You
We'll
can
just have one
leave
big
after
party
I
for
do.
everyone.
That's right, you can't go until I go, and then they go. So, yeah, no, I don't, the particular staff, you look and say, yeah, it is a very young staff. And I think over the years, if I went to a substitute account that kind of rocks, none of these were true. We always spent more money on that. And that was a time where we probably had 2 or 3 maternity leaves a year. And so you go through that particular trend, and as that kind of settles in, then even veteran teachers that are there are just really on top of the game, going through, love what they do, and are replaceable. Can I predict? If you ask me in 3 years how many, I could probably come up with a list. But right now, not next year, nobody's going anywhere. So
Very good.
maybe one person that's partially, but so far, and that's all spots. It's paras, it's teachers, and secretaries, everybody. So it's great to have that continuity.
Yeah, that's great. Page 3.
Page 3, little change in paraprofessionals. We had additionally, obviously a student that needed some IEP, needed particular services, so we had to add a paraprofessional there. Most of the paraprofessionals we have are funded through our grants, so they don't appear on that piece. So it's either sped grant, Title I. Professional development, as that issue comes up under those pieces, one of the line items that was new a year ago was the department also said, we want to know what the stipends are. The stipends really come out to be requirements of DESE on new teachers going forward is that you have mentors. And a mentor does not last year one, a mentor lasts years 2 and sometimes year 3. So with those, it's a stipend to do that, and each new teacher has to be assigned a stipend, and then someone has to monitor that, so we broke that out. If you added those numbers together, you got the previous numbers of 23, 19, 19. So you're looking at 21, you're looking at, okay, we're at 29, we're going forward with a few more, so we're pretty much. And a lot of our professional development, similar to my colleague Barbara, we have written into our grants a lot of the professional development activities. What do some of these things get covered? Course reimbursements. It also is, if I've got workshops and I've got technicians that need technical training in their areas, we're not taking a course someplace. It's offered by company X. It could be out of state, could be out of country, but it's new technology, new technical software, and they're going to travel in the area. And most of it we can pretty much close in this tri-state area. If tri-state is going to New Jersey, New York, and back up to here, we can usually get the training for them, but that could be 2 or 3 days. They've got to go and get that new technology, new software to be able to apply it. So that fits here, and it also fits within Perkins Grant.
So like the mentorship, I guess, is really important too, and for like the vocational aspect of it, right? I guess if you have a particular shop, say, especially like CAD or machine technology, and have someone new coming in and...
You do, on the technical side, you do the academic side.
Right,
It's
exactly.
just the same.
Right.
And part of what we do is, if you walk in the door, the expectation that you're going to be ready to be a teacher, okay, I've got all this technical or this academic knowledge, I'm ready to go. Wow. All this worked in my first lesson plan. I walked in 120 years ago, and my whole lesson plan was done in 10 minutes. And I thought it was going to last a class. And it was over. So it's that training, it's that pieces, and so much of what we do in assessment, so much of what we do in terms of curriculum mapping, which is all online, match the frameworks. Every vocational program, 44 approved vocational programs in the Commonwealth, and that's all you teach. The 2 that are approved by the department without a framework that follow a national accrediting are surgical technology and practical nursing, a little different. Adaptations of the dental and medical and cosmetology, because the post-secondary is also their national boards required. So everybody has a set. And in our post-secondaries, we all have 2 different national sets. So there's one for medical assisting, there'll be one for dental, in addition to counsel on occupation, and in addition to the popular grade. And so there's like 3 sets of eyes looking at the quality of these things. So the mentorship is important, both technical and the academic. How to teach.
A question on that page. I think we're still on page 3. I was just, only because it's one of your positions that's broken out versus your teachers, most of your teachers were lump sum, but I noticed your librarian, those are fairly good increases each year, almost 9% from 19 to 20. Is that something, is there a step?
Certification, licensure, steps, columns, everything moving across to a piece and doing it at a fairly rapid rate. So in addition to the yearly step, there's column leaps.
Yeah.
So you're adding
How many years they've been there?
So when you add the year down, if you said, okay, over 3 years, you've got 3 steps. And if you've jumped 3 columns, you've made a pretty significant move. There's 6 columns, so you get to the very end of that, and it stops and it goes to steps. And there's 22 steps.
In the textbook line, is that e-textbooks as well as paper or just paper?
No, it's just the paper pieces that go through. And most of the software is contained in the administrative piece.
Okay.
The piece, when we get to that. And we've got a concerted effort. We see that we're kind of modifying and saying, similar to what Barbara said earlier, waiting for the next gen, but we're really pretty good. We do a lot online. Textbooks they're not what they used to be before. They're not ready for the science. But so much more of what we do in our Google Docs, so much more of what we do in the first source pieces are that students are working off a laptop, coming out with the tablet, they're doing a whole lot of things that don't require the textbook, so the textbook lasts. So you're not rolling out of your math books and changing everything, because guess what, it did change. This presentation changes electronically, but the background, if you need a reference text, it's still there. Geometry still is geometry. It's just so the textbook companies are having a hard time because they have to.
Well, I remember even in college, I would always buy the 2 years before and then ask my friends for the questions in the book, because it's like $200 cheaper than the book. And it didn't change the
Yeah,
content.
no, once upon a time it was with CD. Well, that's
What's a CD?
that's a rotary.
With an H, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I have no questions more on that.
Number 4. Instructional hardware library, instructional software, instructional hardware. So the top piece was the one that was our main line and put a whole lot of items. So you see where that's definitely gone down. A lot of those monies have been reallocated to other accounts. And computers, laptops, changes in replacement of equipment, that's that 29,000 line. Your lead audio, Wasserman, your professional services coming in to do the contracted services to make sure the LCDs were all working with some of the systems. That's that contracted service piece. In terms of items that we have, in the classrooms and the shops. The next one down, instructional hardware libraries, we've got to go to the repair piece and bringing in, it's got to be separated library versus the school. The top part, instructional hardware is the hardware piece of the computers and the laptops and the changes that you have, the tablets, whatever we're doing. Servers either, if it's just strictly it's CAD and advanced manufacturing, and they've got some of their technology got to change out the systems. We do. The biggest thing, and we'll get to grants in a second, because that's where we get the funding for most of those, but the changes that we see is every couple of years we've got to upgrade either CAD or AMP or some of the others, because the manufacturing software and the design software is reaching a point where this is the platform that you have to run this software efficiently. The good thing is those are really high-powered systems, so they trickle on down in to replace the lowest level regular classroom computers. So we've got a constant morphin. If I take 40 from here, they can sprinkle on down and be used, and then those will be good for 2-3 years going out, we hope, and cross the forward. So there's an ebb and flow. So we've got some changes coming up, so upgrade those. Your laptops alone, just change out the batteries. If you get 18 months out of them, that's a pretty good piece. Just the battery. Laptop's going to be fine, but you got to do a little maintenance, and you got to change it to keep its life. And we run about 50 of those in the library. That's your book. Check it out for work. The instructional software is a, not to say misnomer, but I think in that piece that represents our ingenuity and our remedial and our on-time remediation systems. It's a fabulous, fabulous computer-based educational system. In the past, if you had a difficulty in the first month period, you were destined to fail and go to summer school. Not a good learning piece, not a good training piece. You could be absent, you could break your leg, you could be, something happened, you didn't quite get the concept, you failed the test, you got a 22, you ruined your average. And so now you got a student in November that says, why bother? I'm already destined to the gulag of summer school. No, we put you on the computer system, so we do some supervised in the afternoon, online, and the course content is absolutely excellent, rigorous, professional. So you'll have a teacher in there just to kind of monitor, or a paraprofessional go with students that can do it there. We can online set them up because we can do it at home, so they can go home, catch up on their work. And it really has kept a lot of students using it to keep abreast. They might be out 2 or 3 weeks, had the flu, I missed the whole week. Missing an academic week, and the kid is missing 2 weeks at every place else. So they can't do that. So this has been a terrific, terrific system for us.
What is the name of the system? I'm sorry.
Edgenuity.
Ingenuity?
Ed.
Edgenuity.
EDGENUITY. So that's the bulk of that piece that's in there. but, you know, save one, save two, save everybody. We've seen the numbers of students that go to summer school or failing or left, whatever. And it's concept, or we all learn by concepts. So if I'm not having this concept, then guess what? I did really well in 2, 3, and 4 variables. So, how about get the concept down? How about working? How about additional help and all that kind of thing? And kind of, you know, it's a generation of students that say, oh, it's on a computer. Oh, I get it now. Because it's technology, it's not a different test. Yes?
So was that a capital expense somewhere else? Because I see zeros for the years before. Because obviously you're not buying it in the future. This
It was contracted services before, wrote a grant 1 year to get
Okay,
it.
it was
going through
grant
this
funded,
thing.
okay.
So, what's missing in here is probably about $35,000 to $40,000 worth of technical software.
Mhm.
So, if I didn't have grants to pay for the software, this would be a much higher line.
Right, right.
Because we don't have NACC, I don't have PT Creo, I don't have, you know, any of the other technical things that have been able to write grants that take care of those. So it's any software used in the education of the students.
And guidance is level funded.
Pretty level.
Doesn't
Yep.
get any more level than that.
I know. 5. That's about as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No questions on 5.
Transportation creeps up by the agreement. 6. Pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
here.
I know that when I came to see McCann last year, you guys were putting energy efficient bulbs in and redoing some of your electricity. Are we starting to see the,
Next page.
okay, here we go. So we're seeing the return on that,
We
correct?
are going to see the return.
I don't see the return on
You're
that.
not seeing it yet.
Okay.
You are going to. We have a 2-year project, LEDs, completed this past, last week in March. So every fixture's been changed out. Everything in the school is an LED fixture. Done with the electric students, great learning experience, but had to phase it out because they couldn't just do that for a year because it was out and all the rest of
Well,
the
saved on the labor part of it too, that's
Oh,
great.
no question about it. And the flexibility of getting it done when and least disruptive. You know, okay, we're gonna do it, no, you can't go in that room this week. Okay, we'll postpone it to the next. If you have a contract, that's not gonna happen and so
Right,
forth.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
push it out and all
Yeah.
that, yeah, so.
Yeah.
And part of this is the electrical will have a better savings because there's a cost built in towards that partial payment. There's, part of it was National Grid sponsored and funded, but not all. And so you kind of upfront some money as you go through for part of that. So you had a fixture, maybe 50%, we'll have some of that residual. But we do have net metering factor into this. We also have variable speed drives in many of our equipment, like the test collector and carpentry and the heating unit up in the gym and some of those other things that we added to the LED fixture. Those will have immediate. As we change out our air changing, and we'll call them portable heaters, but we have a lot of ceiling mounted gear, cars, metal fab, automotive, some of the AMT shops. We're changing those out to much more efficient numbers too, and that's kind of how it's doing. So ultimately, I'm hoping that the number in electricity will come in less because it's the efficiency piece. The yaba to that is probably close to 500 computers.
Yeah.
We've got devices, so as we say, we've made all of these changes, we then plug in everything, turn everything on and go. If I'm in carpentry, there's a row of equipment chargers, you know, and so there's a little bit of a difference. But we're doing some projections that we should be right on this number or less, and that includes some additional monies that National Grid will assess out. I have a 24-month deal that I got them to agree to pay some of these extras, so it's pretty good. So I've reduced, you know, 1 year would have been a shock.
It was a good educational experience.
Oh, yeah, I was
It wasn't
blown
just changing
away.
light
I
bulbs,
was,
it was
Yeah.
changing
and it was
fixtures,
just
leveling
exciting
things
for them
out,
to talk about it too.
Programming the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Motion detectors, it was a pretty sophisticated
Yeah,
system.
Yeah.
You can walk
It's a
into a
good one,
room,
yes.
I can have a dozen of those fixtures in there, and every one of them could be individually programmed off a tablet, you know. So if you're sitting in this area, I want it dark, okay, we dropped down to 40%. Over here, I need it bright, that's up to 100 or 90 or 70. It's really good to watch.
That's great,
that.
yeah.
And I think it's just, it grows with that, and that grows with the systems. So over time, we are definitely gonna see savings there.
Exciting.
Fuel, we had to break out fuel, that's for the vehicles, that's where the whole series of zeros there. It used to be down in service, maintenance, and equipment items, so you'll see a little bit of less than that, more up into that other piece. HVAC in plumbing, you know, I'm already spending 57,000 already in this current year with a budget of 37.4. Whoops. But those are the things that are happening, so that's why that's kind of going up.
So why did that go up, you think?
Equipment failures. We're
Okay.
changing out systems. We got, you know, if the proverbial Herman Nelson is the line we use, it says the air handling system in the classroom. 1962, we got a lot of original equipment. We were able to keep it, but the motors have gone out, they gotta be rebuilt and brought back, some units failed. So as we go forward, anytime we renovate an area, we try and upgrade all of those. So it just was a system where we had more of those not working.
Okay, we'll put on that page. Okay, Counselor?
8,
Yep, okay.
municipal retirement, that's for the non-MTRS employees, that's an off-balance retirement system. One of those that receive a letter in the mail, the number in the budget. The Medicaid numbers, obviously, in severance. Planning that there is one person who's retiring, that's the only one I know. So that's why that is there. I would draw your attention to the biggest expense of all time. Dan said 0% Berkshire Health Group, that's the second year in a row that it was 0%. And the changes to employee retiree contributions to plans. Obviously, you can see that number went down from the previous year. That's something we have never seen. So that really accounted for some significant savings, both health life employees and retirees. And also looking at plans. But the biggest part was 2 years of 0% increase in that is significant.
Yeah.
Especially in budget forecasting. And facilities,
Healthy employees.
what we're doing is a renovation of the post-secondary areas, and that's going to take place, and a couple more bathrooms. So what we've picked off is 2 or 3 bathrooms a year to go through over the last few years. So if you go to 38 and 38, did some of those, now we're going to add. What we're doing with our HERA report is that there are still 3 years in the building that have the original floor tile, which is that asbestos tile. So before it becomes cracked, it becomes an issue and a problem. Each of the next 3 years, so we're taking the whole post-secondary area and getting all that tile up and new floor tile done. And then the 6 classrooms around the boiler room, around those, we'll do those. Then the far end of the building has 2 classrooms and a faculty room there, we'll do those. Then we will have eradicated all of that and we've got those down.
Is that a summer project? Okay.
Yeah, because you
Good to know.
have to follow the DEP guidance,
Yeah.
so you don't want to get around.
No.
It takes 2 to 3 weeks, Jim's the contractor, they'll come in, the interchange, all that stuff, get it all up, and then we'll be able to put that on.
One of the things that you'll notice in the long-term debt, there's no numbers in there at this point.
Right.
At some point in the future, we do have some needs. Our new roof is 20 years old. The glass in the building, the frames are 60 years old, or somewhere in that range at this point. Single pane glass, and when we talk about energy conservation, that's our biggest heat loss.
Yeah, I'm
is
sure.
through
Yeah.
all the glass. And there is, if you walk the corridors, and there's a lot of glass in the building. And we've been talking about this for a number of years, that it is gonna have to be on the radar. And it will probably be likely tied to something with the roof as well, just because of age. It'll just come upon us, and at some point, we're gonna have to get a study done to see what the recommendations are as far as dealing with the glass. Like I say, between the heat losses, a lot of the metal frames are just literally rusting at the bottoms. So we're gonna have to figure out where we're going with that, and that will be, likely have to be a capital project to do that. The state has been more inclined to work with school districts on repairs and rehabilitation rather than tearing something down. In years past, we did the roof the last time, we were promised some state aid, probably like 87%. It was a number that was a very strong number we were promised. And at the time when we got the project done, it was complete. They wiped all the debt off and they didn't fund what they had promised us. So the cities and towns picked up $1 million roof job that we split out over a 20-year bond. You know, this time we've got to look at it a little differently. Like I say, they are more interested in maintaining property rather than waiting for them to fall down and having to tear down a 25-year-old building. And some of these buildings are 25 years old, they're done. But we've got a good facility, the structure is good down there, but we're gonna need some work down the road, and you know, hopefully within a couple, 3-year period of time, we're gonna have a plan to how that needs gets addressed before we have a crisis.
What year was that building built?
Opened in 62, district formed in 58, construction 60, late fall 61 to 62. But we've done 2 major renovations supported by communities. One was the roof Dan referred to, and the removal of the oil tank and the front entrance doors, and exterior doors were all done. That was really an egress. Wow, you know, it was a throwback. Well, that's how they designed the building in the 50s by architects who went to school in the 30s. So that's what you had. So we did that one, and then we did the whole gym renovation piece. You know, when we did the gym, the locker rooms, we did that part. Both of those, but I think, you know, it was school building assistant, SBA, back in the day. That was the one. We're on board, absolutely, roof, gotcha. Then there was the whole piece that politically changed and said, okay, no, we're going now to the MSBA system. All those, because in those days you were, where are you on the list? You keep inching up and you check, all right, there we are. And then they said, you're all done. And we weren't the only one. Everybody go wake up. Too bad, we're not sending anybody any money because we're going to put all our money in this new program. And here's the priorities of how we're going to refund. By that time, we're done, built, and everything else. I tried, cajoled, people I know, they said, just isn't going to happen. I said, okay, all right. So we ended up paying for it. So this will be an MSB piece, MSBA, which brings along with it the technical assistance, which brings along the requirements to go through. They've done tons of these envelope pieces, so your architects come in, they know the standards, they know where you're going. Gee, you don't have to be a genius to know glass, the roof, and then the controls. There it is. Boilers are fine, they're great, they're terrific, everything else is. These are the 3 things we want you to focus on and get that done. And then if they're 50 or 60% of that, that's good, because then the other 50% is on us. So that's what we pursue. That'll be a few years down.
Do they support the educational piece of that too, with collaboration with the students, or no, it's all contracted services? Okay.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, I can't touch that. It's you know, approval of the architect and the design and the piece and going through that part. It doesn't mean.
They don't want
that
an
when
inspiring architect?
Oh, no inspiring, yeah.
Great.
And they control the money, so, yep,
Yeah.
okay, thank you very much. Yeah, sure, whatever you want. Yeah, we're glad to do that. Doesn't mean it won't be part of a piece, because it is gonna be part of my discussion. I'm glad you mentioned it. Okay, we're a vocational school. We have a lot of students that are engaged in this piece. As you're developing this thing, we wanna work with you, Mr. Architect and Engineer, so our students can find out. So when you do making presentations, going through,
Yeah,
being a little bit more
being
proactive.
mentors.
You're there, you've gotta be there, so let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, that's great.
So, FY20.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Definitely, thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Maloney.
We had sun 2 days in a row.
Yeah,
Sort
I
of.
know, I got a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
One day, oh. Great, thank you. Thank you.
Any questions from the gallery? I know we didn't ask. Could you just-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It would have been nice if you had supplied the audience with copies of the budget so we could have got more involved. I mean, it's after the fact now, sir.
We can have it.
I'm glad we take it. Thank you.
Here you go.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Amy Sparkman,
Do we have
I
to
have
vote
an
here
answer
for
to that
recommendations
gentleman's
to the
question.
council?
Do you want me to bring it forward to you so it's all in?
Yeah, that would be great. And if you will pass it on.
Great, thanks.
Oh,
It was quick, you did your homework in
Okay.
this time.
Well,
Can I have a motion, should we adjourn?
No,
we're
we make
still-
we need to make a motion to recommend to the full council.
Yes.
We can, for
Because it's
the,
separate from our budget.
And I think we
Yes.
should do it separately, yeah.
okay,
We could probably get an answer from
Do
Dr.
you want me to
Williams first.
provide this answer and then you can conduct
sure,
business?
go ahead.
So to answer that gentleman's fine question there, we have to turn the page.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
So that was a summary line. And so the next page breaks out the individual positions. And one position was not filled because we no longer have that need. The next positions, you'll see 100%, 100%, 100%, those were transferred over to the Title I grant or to the federal special education grant. So that decrease that you saw in the summary line, if you take those values that are being withdrawn from the local budget, they're being picked up through a grant. And that's that's what explains that line.
we're
Okay,
saving,
I do appreciate
we're
that.
saving.
And I also appreciate.
That was a
you
quick
calling me.
response, yeah. Very
Appreciate
quick.
that.
And I have to say that my chair was doing math calculations over there to make sure that I was accurate.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Counselor LaForest has a question as well.
Previously, the committee had requested a series of reports from the mayor's office, and I was wondering if any of those reports had been received.
No.
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 I've not received any reports yet. I was gonna ask the mayor about that.
Yeah, they were in the approved minutes today. We were
I'm
gonna-
sorry.
They were in the approved minutes today that we were gonna follow up on.
I see.
Okay. So Mayor, are we gonna have the reports anytime soon?
They'll be provided when they've compiled the information. Some of them they needed to pull from different sources, so when they're complete, they'll be submitted.
Okay. Okay, I guess we'll have to wait until.
Yeah, we'll need them for recommendation to the council anyways, we have to look at those prior, so I would hope that they would be within the next couple of meetings.
Okay. I also, well, you want to do this first? Do you want to make a motion? Does anybody want to make a motion to recommend?
I think we should do them separately, obviously, and I'll make a motion to approve the North Adams Schools budget for 2020.
I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will make a motion to approve the McCann Vocational School budget.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved, both budgets.
Do we have any other business?
I do have a question about next week's meeting. May 15th, there has been an overlap in setting up the agendas here in council chambers, and there's going to be a public hearing, actually in here. We can move upstairs, or we can postpone our meeting, which means we will be going into June because we have another meeting after that. So we still need time for 2 more meetings, because I do want to get those reports, and I want to take a session just to go through the reports and any additional questions that we have without. We will have to move upstairs to the conference room.
Okay, because those doors are locked.
But yeah, but those aren't available anymore.
No,
Yes,
conference
there's a
room
conference
is
room.
still available.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
And can be used for public meetings. It just needs to be organized through the mayor's office so that the room is reserved.
Councilor Forrest.
Why is a scheduled city council meeting being displaced upstairs?
No, this is finance, it's a finance meeting.
Right, it's
Still
still
a
It's
city
on
council,
Wednesday.
yeah.
It's the Wednesday, on Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Yeah, it's a city council finance meeting, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
So it is a city council meeting, you're right. But the other meeting, which overlapped our meeting, is going to have, I guess there's quite a bit of input and public input and expectation of having a lot more people attend
I think we need
than
to
our
explain.
meeting.
That,
So-
the meeting that it was called by the community development office here at City Hall has nothing to do, be confused with the community development meeting that the council has. They sent out 400 letters to people that are going to be affected by changing in zoning with the upcoming zoning ordinances. It was scheduled for this room because of the need for the space, Somebody didn't bother to check to see if it was already being used for something else.
400 people are going to fit in this room?
They sent out 400 letters, I'm sure they won't have 400 people come back. But one hand wasn't talking to the other one.
So, we were scheduled for this room, and we got overbooked. So since our meeting is gonna be smaller, we are going upstairs,
They have
and
a-
hopefully we will fit upstairs, or we can postpone the meeting.
Do they have?
So,
they have this
that's my
upstairs?
question.
Is this upstairs?
Is
that-
what upstairs?
So they can do a PowerPoint?
We have a TV, a full screen and laptop that we can set
Oh,
up.
okay. I should mention that I'm going to be away next week, so I won't be able to attend the meeting on Wednesday.
So I guess I'm taking suggestions. I know there might be some counselors that might want to go to both meetings. So do we have any suggestions as to if we should postpone the finance meeting or if we should hold the finance meeting?
Well, postponing the finance meeting means postponing a vote on the budget.
Yes.
So I guess
that's
it's
what
a
it means.
matter of
I
priority.
mean, I'm not in favor of postponing the meeting. I think that we've set the meetings, the public knows about the meetings, and I think we need to stick with that schedule myself. That's my opinion. I'm okay with the meeting.
You know, I don't know which one I'll attend, which meeting I will attend. I think the other one will be interesting to see because I'm not sure if that still comes back to us one more time, the zoning changes, right? So, you know, right, we're gonna be basing our vote, maybe a little bit what happens at that meeting. It's, you know, I don't know. As we would be, maybe what happens at the finance committee meeting. So I mean, while it can be extended another Wednesday, but I don't know if there's any objection. You could have 2 meetings in 1 week too, you know.
Right.
We have a week where we don't have a meeting on Tuesday. It's possible you could do a Tuesday and Wednesday to fit it in, so at least it ends the same. But I don't know, you know, I've conflicted of which one I would probably go to. There's important things on, I think that's the one, the general government is on that one.
Yes.
So there's things in that I would like to have discussed, but the zoning changes are sort of big and new also, and it'd be interesting to hear what the concerns are from the public at the meeting, if they attend. I mean, I would say if 400 are invited, there should be hopefully at least a couple dozen, you know?
Right, exactly.
I mean, I have serious problems with some of the stuff in that zoning. I've been looking at it and I'm going to take the NORAD mill and put it in a zone where he can't do business the way he is doing now. I mean, it needs nothing else that needs to be tweaked. You have the changing of.
Okay, so you know what, maybe we shouldn't be discussing all that stuff now.
Right.
I just really want to know if we should continue to have the meeting next Wednesday, and we'll have it upstairs on the second
So,
floor.
did the letters have a time? Okay, so we can't change.
6 o'clock in this room.
Yeah, and so we will be
I mean-
upstairs at 6:30. We are getting bumped out of our city council
What is
chambers.
next
Inappropriate.
week's budget?
Next week is general government and the compensation plan.
We already kind of went through general, I mean, I think we should keep the same time.
Okay.
That's
We'll
my
be
opinion.
consistent
And Council Wilkinson, you won't be there, you're saying?
No, I'm away next week.
Okay.
But you'll send us comments in an email if you have any questions or
Concerning.
any of the topics that we'll be discussing next Wednesday.
Sure.
Okay.
Where I'm going is not a whole lot of internet.
Okay.
Just another suggestion, what about moving it to 7? At least it gives an hour for the other meeting.
Yeah.
And the other meeting starts at 6, so
Okay.
at least it would give an hour where the counselors could attend both.
We may be wrong on that. It's not gonna take a whole lot of time.
Yeah, but at least we get the majority of it, which is the hour.
Right, no, I know, but it gives us an hour.
Okay, so yeah, we
Can we
will,
do that? Can we do
if you
that?
want to,
Yeah.
yes, we can move that till 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So that would have to be
We will still be
reposted. You'll have to repost it though.
Yes. we
Okay.
will repost it. Okay, so that resolves that issue. Any other questions?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned, or meeting adjourned?